In this video, I'm going to point you to a few important settings so that you can set up your account just the way you like. Okay, so let's jump into our project.co demo account, and we want to go over to the options button and then to account settings. And where I'm going to point to first is the account settings page. Okay, so on here it's a page of default settings really. So at the top we've got our account name, which is your account name. That probably doesn't need to change all that often. But then below there we've got a few different things that you'll really want to take a look at. First up is default project status. So this is the project status that each project will be assigned when you start it. By default you only have two statuses, active and completed, but you can add a whole range of different statuses in another part of your account settings, or by clicking this edit project statuses link at the bottom here. And if you want to set your projects to start on a different status other than active, you can just choose that in here. Default project privacy is important if you want to have your projects on a different privacy setting when you first create them. So if you want to have all your projects start on project privacy, then you can set that in here. Default task status is very similar to the default project status in that it sets the starting status for all new tasks. So if you want all tasks to start on a particular status, you can define what that might be in here. And just like project statuses, you can actually edit your task statuses and create your own task statuses in here. So you can create your own set of task statuses and then define which one new tasks should start on. Similar to default project privacy, you've also got default task privacy, and this determines which task privacy new tasks start on. So if you want new tasks to be on creators and collaborators privacy by default, then you can set that in here. But if you want it to stay on creators only, then you could set that in here as well. And that'll mean that all new tasks that are created will start with that privacy setting. Similarly, again, you've got your default note privacy. So if you want the default to be creators can edit and collaborators have no access, then you can set that up here, but you can select one of the other default note privacy settings here as well. Then when you create a new note, it'll take that privacy setting as a default. And these all just save you having to make these changes after creating various different things. Your default currency is for payments. So if you want your default currency to be British pounds, for example, then you can put that in here. If you want it to be US dollars, euros, or any other currency, you can select that in here. Then when you create a payment, that will be your default currency setting in the currency input. Of course, you can still change it away from that when you're creating the payment, but this will be your default currency starting point. Okay, then these next few options we actually have a separate video about called auto project images, where it goes over how when you create a new project it automatically puts a cover image and a project image at the top, and these are pulled from an Unsplash collection of images. So you can turn auto project image off and auto cover image off, or have it on, and this is the Unsplash collection ID that they pull from. But I'll link the video above to the YouTube video of the auto project images so you can look into that a little bit further. It goes into depth about that setting. Card cover images is for the Kanban, and it determines whether images show on the cards or not. So by default, and when this setting is on, the Kanban cards will take the first uploaded image to every files page of the task. And then we have a selection of default views. So these are at the account level. So remember, we're in account settings and account here. So this determines what your default view will be. So whenever you click on projects on the welcome page, or by going back to projects from your breadcrumbs, it'll determine whether you'll end up on the list view, the cards view, or the Kanban view. You can also set that for templates. When you go into templates in any way, do you want to go by default to the list view or the cards view? And probably more useful and something that you'll use more often is the tasks view. You can decide when you click tasks, the global tasks view, whether you end up on all or my tasks, and whether you end up on list view, calendar view, scheduler view, or Kanban view. And you can also set that separately for when you're looking at tasks inside a project versus globally. So you can say inside globally, you might want to look at your my tasks, whereas when you're inside a project, you might want to have all tasks. And then you can also determine whether it's a list view, calendar view, scheduler view, or Kanban view that you land on by default. These default views can actually be set at the account level, and they'll apply for all users across your account, but they can then also be overridden by each individual user by going back to the welcome page, and then in options they can go to your settings. So I can override the account level setting just for my user, and I can do that by going to the bottom of this page, and I have a very similar default views. So I can set my personal default views that would override the account setting for my user. By default, all these say to use the account setting, but if I want to switch projects away from list view and I prefer to view them as a Kanban, then I can set that in here. One other important setting that you might like to look at is if we go back to account settings and go to localization, you can set your account language, time zone and working days. That'll determine which days are grayed out in the calendar and the scheduler, and it'll also determine how the dynamic dates are calculated on tasks when you have templates. So in a template you can set a task to be X working days from the project start date, and that will be calculated using these working days. You can also specify your date format that you prefer and the day your week starts on. So you might have your week starting on a Sunday, or you might prefer your week to start on a Monday, and that will show in the calendars as well as the calendar and the scheduler as well. Of course, don't forget to go back to settings and look at all the other boxes in here, but they're the most important ones that you'll want to set up as a new account, is your account settings and your localization. Otherwise, you can set up your project statuses and your task statuses, your invoice info, custom fields and any branding, but just make sure you set up your account settings and localization in the way that you like, so everything's set up just for you. As always, if you have any questions, please get in touch with our support team and we'd be very happy to help.